I'm still in San Diego State a little longer, but hopefully this works for my desk. I'm in my car.
Right on. Well, we appreciate you joining us nonetheless. Really looking forward to this. So, yeah, we've got Sam should be jumping in here momentarily. We'll let everyone kind of get settled, if that's okay.
Yeah, awesome.
Still calling in, so expecting a pretty decent turnout tonight from the online metrics that we saw. So
awesome. Well, excited to be with you guys. I'm it's awesome. I've been trying to convince my family to move down to San Diego, and we stayed in Mission Beach. So, and then yesterday we were in Del Mar. So beautiful weather. The lockdown, like I'm in an area where the lockdown's crazy. It's like, you want to talk about communism. It's like, it's insane. And, you know, there's riots going on in the nice areas that are like 5 minutes from us. Anyway, both of my daughters are like, we should move here. I'm like, yeah, I'm talking.
That's funny. How old are your daughters, Barry? Uh-oh.
Whoops. Give me just a second. I've got a senior in college, so she's down here in Southern California, going to a private, really good school called Biola University. There's like 6,000 kids. As a dad, I'm super excited because it was rated the #1 worst party school in the state. None of the kids are drinking, so they go to Disneyland. And so my she's turning 21 next week, and she's 21 going on like 12. It's the cutest thing. Super sweet girl. And then I've got a 16-year-old who's going to be a junior in high school, and she's like the one that's almost like the more mature one. So
Sure.
And they're really, the two girls are like best friends. It's really awesome.
I love it. Those are fun ages. We had the unique experience to inherit a teenager straight out of high school as young adults ourselves. So my sister, or my wife, lost both her parents, and her sister ended up moving in with us right after high school. So we kind of got that teenage experience at a very young age.
Wow. Now, are you guys all in Des Moines, by the way?
Yeah. So this meetup, and everyone should have voice privileges. But yeah, this meetup is largely Des Moines based. So
okay.
Iowa in general, you know, with the virtual component, there has been some outreach beyond that. But from a foundational standpoint, everything is positioned in Des Moines, Iowa.
Okay. No, that's awesome. Well, we're really
I'm new and I'm in New York City. But I invest in Des Moines. So I can relate to the lockdown and riot situation. If I showed you out my window here, it's all right below me on a daily basis. Lately, not, thank God. So
yeah,
it's crazy.
It's insanity. Yeah, no one's talking about their cerveza bug. We call it cerveza bug or COVID. It's like, oh, look at the COVID. I think I'll tell you, not to get political, but you'll know where I stand on this issue. I think we're the only family in the entire state that doesn't actually own a mask, yet alone wear one. So I walk in, I just walk in to wherever I go and pull out my wife wants me to actually have a little free nonprofit coaching offering to people. It's because it's like I just walk in with a public notice that says, pursuant to Order 9 of whatever county I go into, because all the counties have an out clause. They have to, and I don't have to. We don't have to wear a face. It's not required by law. And then they're temperature testing now. So like I went to the gym this morning, and they literally want to put it creeps me out. They want to put a radar tester on your head, and I'm like, I got an order, and they're like, oh, sir, go ahead, go on in, and everybody else is like coming up like chattel. You know what I mean? Like,
I love it. You absolutely need a coaching avenue around that. That's fantastic.
And I've changed policies in our county. Like we have a big grocery store chain called Safeway, and went all the way to the kind of the main manager in the store. Well, they called me. They they did personal shopping, and then it's probably 1 out of 60 places. And and so anyway, the regional manager actually called me and said, hey, we ran this up the flagpole. We wanted to let you know we're training everybody in the county that if somebody comes in with that sort of document, that we're going to let you go in. It's actually a HIPAA violation. I don't know if you know this, but it's discrimination. So I just basically say, hey, and it's never confrontational. It's always like friendly and just informing. And I just said, hey, I just wanted to let you know that now that you actually have this document, I have one for you as a copy. It's a CYA letter for you. But if you don't let me in, it's discrimination, and that actually would be a problem. That's a HIPAA violation, and you could be personally liable for up to $175,000.
Oh, I'm sure that goes over great in California.
And they're like, oh yeah. They're like, sir. So it's awesome. Anyway.
Fantastic.
So now you know where I stand on the Cerveza bug.
I love it. Looks like Sam's jumped on. So real quick, Gary, we're going to transition to local stats. This is something that hopefully everyone finds value in. We do a quick reporting on current inventory levels around Des Moines, kind of the trends that we're seeing. Sam, I'm going to turn it over to you for a sec.
Awesome. Hey guys, just a super quick update. So to dive into the number of new listings across our Des Moines area, we had 1,816 new listings for the month of May, which is a slight drop from last year. We had about 2,100 in May last year. Our total number of active listings for residential in the month of May, 2020, we have 5,348. Which again is a slight decrease from what we had in 2020. Our total number of 2019, our total number of listings last year in May was 6,121. But the good news is our number of sales are staying pretty close to the same from what we had last year. So
Nice.
in May of 2020, we had about 1,300. And our average days to sell in May of this year actually decreased from that of last year. So last year in May, yeah, definitely awesome. Last year in May, we had about 64 average days. And so we've decreased that by 9. So we have 55 average days on market from listing date to sale closed.
Nice. So we're seeing number of pendings go up. We're seeing solds stay the same, and really that's indicative of a hot market because our inventories are going down year over year. So that's definitely one way to look at this. The other way, the pessimistic way is, hey, we don't have as many listings going on market. But I don't think that's the case. People are staying put, but the demand's still there. It's pent up for acquisition and transfer still.
Absolutely. And here's like the sprinkles and cherry on top of this delicious sundae. Our average sale price has increased by $10,000. So
Wow.
last year in May, we were at an average of $231,000 sale price. This year, May 2020, we're at $241,000 average sale price. So
Totally be surprised on that one.
I know, right? I like to see that though. That's really good for folks that are selling.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sam. I appreciate that update.
For sure.
Gary, I'm going to turn it back over to you, buddy. Do you want to briefly introduce yourself? There's a handful of folks that might not know who you are. I hope they do, but they might not.
Yeah, so super excited to be here. Gary Boomershine. I live in about 45 minutes east of San Francisco, so don't hold that against me. People said, "You're really from California?" I think a lot of people think I'm more Texan. Just probably. I've been doing this business a long time. I went full-time real estate investing. I came out of the technology industry. I have a family history of real estate. So I was a licensed agent when I turned 18. I'm actually now 51. So I held a license. I paid for college, holding open houses. Long story there. Very entrepreneurial family. I was door knocking and cold calling at 18, and I really wasn't interested, especially on the listing side, and went down the technology path. I did 4 Silicon Valley super well-funded companies that went public, and I had the ups and the downs of making millions and then seeing the stock like disappear. I was part of the whole .com 2001, 2002 thing. And I was on the sales side, selling super high end. So I have an computer engineering background. Worked for a big consulting firm called Accenture Anderson Consulting. And then I did these 4 startups on the sales side, selling big ticket 500,000 to 5 million software for Fortune 500. And I loved it. I found that selling was the relationship solution selling, which is really what I think we do in this business of finding solutions to people's problems. I love it, the creativity. But I was traveling like crazy. We had 2 brand new babies. I had, my wife, I was never home. I think I had 180,000 miles on United in 2003. So I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely on the JOB, going nowhere. And it was my wife and I, we said, you know what, let's get into real estate. Let's go back to what we know. Her parents come from a real estate rental property background. I don't think her dad ever made more than 70,000. He was a contractor, general contractor, but they actually amassed a lot of rental properties and built their family home. So I got really excited. I went full time in 2004. I've done a ton of deals. I've done every kind of possible deal. I started what I got really excited about originally, 2004. I was buying luxury home, multi-million-dollar leveraged short sell, foreclosure, and bankruptcy deals. And I loved it because at that time, before like the banking things changed, I could go in and negotiate these massive discounts and buy notes. And I was using all of my experience, and it was like shooting fish in a barrel. And so I think I did 300 short sale deals. Very first one I did, I literally made $181,000 on a deal in Bakersfield, California. And then I started doing it up and down the coast.
On that one, Gary?
Oh, well, the interesting thing, it was a seller 5 hours away. I didn't really know anything about it was my first, I just knew about short sales and I could negotiate with the bank. And the property, that one was worth he had one loan with Bank of America. It was $165,000 first. The property as is, it was 4 acres, total rundown. The property as is was worth 205. And the seller I knew just wanted to get rid of it. And I drove 5 hours. I didn't even talk about the property. And he was the one that came to me and said, Gary, I really like you. And let me just cut to the chase. I would like to make you a deal. I'll give you $10,000 to take the house. And I'm like, well, that's kind of an interesting scenario. I've never known of, it basically was 20,000 in arrears. And he's like, he was trying to get credit. He goes, I figure if I come up with 10 grand, you come up with 10 grand, I'll just deed you the house. And I said, you don't have to give me money. I'm a guy that wants to sleep at night. I heard his story. I said, but I'd like to try this thing and see if I could negotiate with the bank. Well, Bank of America, and this does not work today.
Right.
It's a totally different scenario. But I went right to the VP, and they had not filed foreclosure, and they tipped their cards, and they thought they were in 3rd position.
Love it. Love it.
So I was coming in. I was going to offer $105,000 for full payoff and satisfaction. I turned around and I sent them the offer for $31,000, and within 1 hour I got a acceptance letter. So I bought this house worth $205 for $31, and then I screwed up every possible thing ever known. I mean, I hired a the contractor stuff. But we ended up selling the place for $280, And I had to rehab it twice, by the way. In Bakersfield is not a good place in California. It was just a disaster. The contractor put 1,200 square feet of tile down on plywood that I had to pull up myself and learn how to tile. That was my
Yeah,
first experience.
that's an expensive lesson there.
Yeah, but anyway,
If you're
I
going to learn that lesson, though, right? That's a good house to do it on with that kind of margin.
Yeah.
So that third position, just for everyone else on the call, that the glory of that third versus the first, right, is the bank's valuation on their mortgage is based on position. So if they're the first lien holder, there's a lot of clout on that foreclosure. If they're the third, they've got 2 other people to run through, so they very well might not be getting paid. So, yeah.
Yeah, I did another one in Palo Alto. This was probably my favorite deal. I didn't think I had a chance at it. It was a bankruptcy, and the guy owed 1.6 million on a house that I ultimately flipped for 785.
Nice.
And it had 7 loans on it, and I negotiated all the debt down to 622,000. So I picked it up for 622. I flipped it for 785. I'm the king of creative, so I didn't actually put a dime into I recorded the deed. That was it. So
Nice.
I didn't have any money into the deal. It was all negotiation. And that, if I kept that house, my wife and I needed the money, but that house today would be a tear down for probably 2.6 million.
Wow.
It'd be a Google house. So anyway, I've done about 300 of those. The last, I built a company called the Bankers Code, where it was basically the whole start of rehab lending. So I moved when the market turned in 2008. I said, hey, the money is actually the deal flow all went back to the banks. And you guys might want to hear this, because this is where we're going to probably start seeing trends here in probably 12 to 24 months, 12 to 18 months. The deal flow moved from going off market, which is really how we're all doing this business for the most part right now. Off market means direct mail, cold calling, door knocking, right? Referrals, or wholesalers, or where the wholesalers go. And it moved to online, on market, which means MLS, bank-owned REOs, HUD properties, and foreclosures. And so I didn't want to do that. You had to have cash in 2009. You made a fortune, and rehabbing. And the two things, I didn't like rehabbing. I just like negotiating. So basically I basically became the lender, and using none of my own money. And then I taught it to probably 3,000 people. And so the rehab lending model, everything that we do in real estate is all creative. It's all finance anyway.
Yep.
It's just where we are on the food chain. Right now, from a real estate perspective, I'm doing a lot of virtual wholesaling in 4 markets. I'm not a super high volume guy. I'm not going to tell you guys I do hundreds of deals a year or anything like that. About 1 out of 10, 1 out of 12, I pick up with owner financing and subject to. Typically 0 interest, and those are massive, massive payouts. I have a strategy, and I'm happy to share with you guys on some things that I'm doing that I don't know anybody in the country that does, because I actually will buy a property with owner financing. I'll still flip the property, and then I'll turn the owner financing at 0 interest into hard money. Nice. And I'm then going into better assets at a lower loan to value, like 20 to 30% loan to value or loan to purchase price. Believe it or not, and I get 9%. And so it's basically like I become the bank and I get really good spreads. And so I do that, and I do a lot of lending. And so
would you say your passion's inside the lending?
I think as real estate investors, really understanding how to think like a banker.
Yeah.
If you really start thinking like a banker, it is all financial engineering. Here, I'll just tell you guys, this may make your heads explode, and probably not exactly where we were going to take this call, because a lot of people know me, by the way. I own a company called RealEstateInvestor.com. It used to be REI Vault. We've done more marketing. We've sent out over 50 million pieces of direct mail. We got more experience on direct mail than anybody in either real estate investing or agents. I've got about 1,200 active clients that we do direct mail for. We recently merged with a software company acquisition. That's Robert Seifert. He had Investor PO
Yep.
and Property List Manager, data stacking and skip tracing. So we took all of our done for you services and packaged it together with the new platform, and that's RealEstateInvestor.com. But I also have a phone team, so we do a massive amount of, we call them sales ninjas, but the leads will generate the leads, or our clients will generate their own leads, whatever they want. It comes into a system that does massive follow-up, which is really where the money is made. I want to share it with you guys. If you're not doing this, there's a couple of tricks to get marketing working. And the follow-up is multi-channel, which means it's leads come in and text messages, ringless voicemail, direct mail, follow-up letters and postcards. So, changing from one card to another, email, text message, and then into an auto dialer that our sales ninja phone team can call that seller indefinitely to qualify them and then schedule an appointment. And so that's what RealEstateInvestor.com does.
Can we dig into that real quick, Gary?
Sure.
So talk to me, first call closings. That's what a lot of wholesalers work off of. There's not a ton of follow-up from my experience. Do you have a percentage in mind of first contact closings that come through?
Yeah, I can tell you what the number is, and this is shocking. So 3% of the profits. And you guys can write this down because so many people miss this. And by the way, it's not just real estate. It is this is any kind of marketing that's going, there's push and pull marketing. So we're pushing, we're going out to people, right? And so there's a targeting and trying to get the best population of targets. And then the marketing will generate the initial lead, and only 3% of the profits come from that initial inbound lead, which means you get on the phone and take the live call. The money is in the follow-up. And I'll tell you what the statistics are. 90% of the profits will actually come after the 6th interaction with the seller. Yeah. And less than 10% of people actually follow up more than twice. And so people will get maybe they get the marketing down. Everybody's trying to get the secret unicorn fairy dust magic list. It's like, oh, I'm trying to get the fairy dust list. And by the way, there's a lot of people that sell the fairy dust, right? You can't open up our email in the morning without seeing fairy dust everywhere. It's a little magic tool, and you just buy this thing and it's going to make you billions. And if you guys find it, tell me. I haven't seen it. But
I've been looking.
It's not about the list or the direct mail piece, or the copy is all important. You're going to get incremental improvements on the response, okay? And we'll talk about that too, but it's not about that. It's all about the follow-up. And it's just, a lot of people are looking for the motivated seller. And I think that's a total mindset issue. You want to be thinking of, let's look for reasonable sellers, because not all sellers are motivated yet. And especially if you guys are doing this, especially if you've got a sales team, you really want to educate the team to be thinking that all leads suck. They get warmed up over time, and you're just putting them into buckets. You just need to separate the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yep. And by the way, the ugly will turn to good. Some of the best deals I've ever closed, and a lot of our clients will close, are some of the angry callers. Because angry callers, most people are freaked out. I had a guy, he was a fireman, and probably the worst call I've ever had. I personally called him. He threatened me and like he was going to kill me, right? And I made $241,000. I bought 2 properties. His wife was in jail for embezzlement, so he wasn't pissed off at me.
Yep.
And if you want, I'll give you the perfect pitch. Anybody want the perfect pitch of what to say to an angry person?
I think, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I'll write that down. I'll come back to that in a little bit, because I've given this to a lot of people, and I always get the same feedback. They're like, Gary, that was worth like massive money. I'll come back to that in a couple minutes. But 90% are between the 6th interaction. And so a lot of people, they're going too fast. I'll give you a couple of numbers. On average, direct mail is an example. The average time from the lead coming in to the deal going into contract, on average, is 4 months right now. And in some places, like in Dallas, from what we're seeing, it's actually longer.
And that's from the time the lead's coming in. So that's after they've hit you back. That's not when you started mailing necessarily, right?
That's not when I mailed. It was when they first picked up the phone, that initial lead. What is the lead? Everybody has a different definition of a lead. A lead from my perspective and our perspective is somebody that puts up their hand and it's unique. So if a seller calls or, opts into a Carrot website or what have you, and if they do it 10 times, that's one lead.
Yep.
So it's the number of leads to get to a number of qualified, motivated ones that are ready. And we call those net leads or viable. Those are the ones we should be working, and then we close. So what I'm finding on direct mail and cold calling is about 1 in 40, 1 in 45.
Yep.
Super important. So everybody's trying to figure out how to get to 1 in 20. It's the wrong focus initially.
Squeezing that turnip too hard. That's not.
That's right. There's marketing, that's traffic, that's generating the lead, and then there's the refining. What I call mining and refining. Mining and refining is working and processing the leads. Hey, the lead came in. Are they saying they're not interested? Are they saying to remove me from the list? Is it a hang up? Those hang ups are absolute gold mines.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many people I've seen, even some big players that they had, Chris Arnold is an example. Chris Arnold had 20, he has a super good friend of mine. He's in Dallas. He had over 2 years, he had 25,000 untouched hang-up leads because his team was only working the cream of the crop. And those are gold. The leads from direct mail will typically, they're good for probably 2 years, especially if you're going after, when you're doing outbound, especially if you're going after people that have equity, which is what I recommend. The free and clear, the inherited, the absentee probate, that type of thing. You can go back, they'll warm up over time. The not interesteds are fantastic. You just have to wait about 4 months before you really start interacting them.
For sure.
I don't personally delete anybody that asks to be removed from the list. You guys know who Chris Chico is?
I don't know.
He's probably the creator of virtual wholesaling. He's probably the originator of the whole movement for how to wholesale from anywhere in the world. Been around a long time. The little yellow postcard, if anybody's seen those all were really developed by Chris. And we partnered. He was an original founder with me of the original business. But he used to, he tested having a pre-recorded voicemail, okay, where sellers come in, and he would not allow them. They had to go through the whole 2.5 message. He's Puerto Rican too. He speaks fast with a funny accent. He forced people because he didn't even want them to leave a message. He wanted 100% hangups, because then he went back and he tested it, and the amount of money he was making just on that versus taking live calls was substantial. And why? Because it's a sales thing, right? When a seller is calling us, they have the power, and typically when we're calling them back, it's kind of what they call on your toes versus on your heels in the selling. So, right? So you want to be on your toes, not like behind. Let's see, what else can I tell you?
Don't forget about that angry perfect pitch.
Oh yeah, I definitely will. You should always have if you're doing direct mail specifically, I'll speak on a couple of these channels. You want to have a live operator, live person answer the calls. You'll make more money. It's proven. Almost all the big
live answering. What are the medians that you'd suggest for that? So I've heard radio. I've heard any kind of sign type calls. Those are supposed to be live, right? What is there anything else that you'd recommend?
Yeah, anything that has a live phone number, as long as it's not what's called blind copy. And let me tell you what blind copy is when on your marketing piece, it doesn't say anything about you wanting to buy the house. And we still send a lot of that out. It's probably our biggest money maker still to this very day. Gets a lot of angry calls. About 5% of the people that call in will actually hear the message, because what happens is it says something like this. I'm exaggerating, but hey, your house is on fire and blah, blah, blah. No, it's not that bad, but it's kind of an urgent notice. Hey, I've been trying to reach you for, a long time. And as a last resort, we've sent you this postcard, and I've created a pre-recorded message so you can hear what I have to tell you. And it definitely it's 5%. You'll get angry callers. It is the biggest money maker. It'll typically get 5 to 6 times the response. Well, maybe not that in this current market, maybe like 3 to 4 times the number of responses. But the leads are fantastic. If you've got the right list, you're looking for an inbound call. And the hangups on that will outproduce. It does have to go into a follow-up system and into a phone team.
Yep.
There's 2 phone teams, by the way. Is this sometimes I'll go into tons of data.
You're okay. Tangents are fine. If anyone has questions as we're going through this that you want to ask specifically, just toss them in text, and I'll interject into Gary so that we can get them asked in order. But please, guys, be interactive. Ask us the questions. We'll get them answered as we go.
Awesome. Let's see. So that's the only type of message that you probably want to have a pre-recorded message. Now, if you have bandit signs, and I'm a believer of bandit signs. I love bandit signs. Different cities and states have different ordinances. I've never worried about that. I just use a trust in a business line that nobody can find. That a lot of people. I mean, we're real estate investors, right? So, and I've never had a problem. I put a bandit signs. That's still a great way to generate leads, and a lot of people make money off of it. But
from the local
bandit sign,
guys,
I would
real quick, Gary, from the local side on the bandit signs, just so everyone's aware, there is an ordinance at City of Des Moines that says not to do it. Enforcement is against the physical putter downer of the sign. So they bark really loud, but in general, they have to enforce against the person physically installing that sign. Outside of that, they'll just pick them up and throw them away. That being said, I personally don't do bandit signs. They drive me crazy when I see them, but
yeah, I'll tell you what outperforms. I know this for certain. Don't buy anything that's pretty. You want them ugly. You're better off using marks a lot and having them marks a lot. You don't want anything. The ugly sign, simple language will outproduce 4, 5, 10 to 1. It's crazy. Even postcards.
I can feel my wife cringing at all the signs that are coming to Des Moines, Gary.
Yeah, no, I know. Typically you'll put them up. Sometimes you'll put them up on the weekend, because that's really when they're not working, and you put them up and just take them down Sunday night. But they do work. But that would be the only one that I would do a pre-recorded message. It's a filter. I'd be happy if anybody in your coaching, in your group wants the perfect pre-recorded message. We've got one. It's time tested. The guy that actually did it was a founder with me that went over to Waypoint. That's now Invitation Homes. So Colony, Waypoint, they've bought, I think his voicemail, they bought like 17,000 houses. So it's proven. The message. So let's see. So live answer. It does not. I'm not a big fan of having. That's a $10 to $20 an hour resource. Outsourcing is fine. It should have the right script. Pat Live is an example. People will say, well, I've heard bad things about Pat Live. It's really about, like, we set it up. If somebody comes to us, we've got a couple of different choices. We set it up for everybody. We never have any complaints. But it really comes down to the right script.
Yep.
If you're doing a live answer service, you want to have what's called a warm out. And that means that the live operator's taking the call, and if they know the seller's motivated and it's during your office hours, that should transfer right then and there. Your conversion rate, if you wait after 15 minutes, your conversion rate goes down by 400%. So, and by the way, that's when leads come in. This is why we merged with Robert. you need to basically have some contact within 15 minutes or your conversion goes down. We average for our phone team, now that's the front end phone team. I built I've got 40 people that are full-time on an auto dialer. As the leads come in, they automatically will get pushed into an auto dialer for our clients if they want it. And they're dialing for dollars. And we're finding it's an average of 10 times to get the seller back on the phone.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, they try to do it with their sales team or you as the investor, and that's a massive problem. So the couple things that you want to have somebody else other than us doing it is the follow-up and the outbound phone work is a massive moneymaker, but it can't be you. And I always say, hey, we're investors. The money is made sitting face to face or over the phone with the seller that's ready to sell.
Yep.
That's the $1,000 to $10,000 an hour work, right? It's not the $10 an hour work. And if you're doing $10 an hour work, you're going to have a $10 bank account. I mean, people forget that. And then a lot of people are fairly new. They're like, well, I got to do this myself. And then I'll hire somebody. And guess what? You'll never get very few people. Most people quit. You never get out of that mousetrap. You really should run it like a business and get somebody to do that for you.
Yeah, that's been one of the biggest things in recent years that we've witnessed is that mindset shift from how do we hand off what we're doing right now to other team members, and then how do we outsource that entirely? And that's the merge from a solopreneur to a small business to a company is letting go of that control to a large degree. Yep. And you're 100% right, Gary. I mean that follow-up sequencing has to be handed off sooner rather than later.
That's right. There's really to make it work. And again, I'm talking about anything where we're going out to the seller. And this actually, even pay-per-click, like people pay-per-click when online or SEO advertising, radio, direct mail, text broadcasting, anything we're going after off-market deals. You gotta generate the leads. That's the marketing function. You need a follow-up system that's automated, that actually the leads come in and they get followed up on. Text, email, ringless phone. You should never send the same postcard out once the seller's called. That's another, people just continue to mail. It's like you've already gotten the lead. And then into an auto dialer, preferably to a phone team. So that's the system. And then you want an inside sales team. Somebody that's dedicated. This is all businesses run this. They have what's called inside and outside sales, or inside and sales acquisitions. And what happens is a lot of people will say, oh, sales acquisitions, you do this job. That's a disaster. Because it's dialing for dollars and you're dealing with a massive amount of rejection. So you want somebody that, that's a low end person. Usually that's more of a customer service friendly person too. And so we should only be dealing with the people that are, that are ready. So 45 leads come in, typically about a third are going to be any good right then and there. Going through the system, that's about 15 they're going to be viable, where a seller said, yeah, I'd consider an offer. I am thinking about selling. And they provide some basic information. About half of those should get offers. Yep. So of the 15, about half. Now, the rest of these should be continued to work. Right. You should never leave it's the no seller left behind. But about half of them are probably worthy of getting an offer. And then you should close 1 in 7. That's about the national average.
That outside lead team shifts as soon as they become a viable lead, correct? So now you're correct. Okay.
That's correct. And then those are the ones that we should be working, or our sales acquisition managers should be working at doing all the work and the follow-up and making offers. And 1 in 7 should convert into a deal. And that's if you're not very good.
Yep.
So now if you start working on the conversion piece, marketing goes along with sales, or traffic and conversion. And then if you start learning things like making multiple offers, and if you slow down making offers a little bit slower, because most people make the mistake of coming in and breaking the number one rule of sales of he or she who speaks first loses. And there's a timing issue. Most people break the number one rule where they're giving an offer and they can't figure out like why they're not closing. And it's like, so you should be able to get about 1 in 3, 1 in 4. So if anybody's on the phone, you're closing 1 in 4, you're doing fantastic.
Yeah. And what you're talking about there is anchoring, right, Gary? So getting that price set, letting that seller kind of work themselves to a price point, a state of mind, before you ever present that to them. So inside of our model, we set price 3 times on that initial lead. We're trying to get a price set. We follow the Martinez model where we go up and down and get them kind of structured into that position. We set it again on the appointment. And we always use that scapegoat of, hey, we're going to go back, we're going to run those numbers, but should be somewhere around what you're thinking, maybe, kind of, sort of, right? And then the final is come back, set that table, explain all of the details depending on personality type, right? We're looking at that personality type, and then saying, okay, where did you think you needed to walk away from? Ask that question one more time, and then finally set the hook on final pricing. So
awesome.
Yeah.
John's great. John, I don't even know if he presents it this way. John's the only guy that I know in the business that's out there teaching the right model, which is there's called transaction selling.
Yep.
And there's solution selling. So transaction selling is usually like low end products. It's a high pressure, take it or leave it kind of thing, slam it down their throat. That's usually like coaching, like if you've ever bought a coaching program type of thing, or home study courses, anything that's typically less than 10 or 15,000. Solution selling is where you're building rapport, right? You're building rapport and some trust. You're establishing and driving into pain, and then you're creating a solution to that pain. And I love it. I think John's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's great. So the conversion is 1 in 4. And then if you want to get it even better, you're going to typically find in the 4 deals that you close 1 in 4, the one that you don't want to lose is to a competitor. So now you can actually sharpen it up, and I'll give you guys a little tool I use. The model I use, and I'm delivering a sales, an advanced sales course around this. And it's slated for, it was actually slated for last year, but it's like, focus getting me in a room, but it's called RAPID. RAPID is an acronym that I follow. So it's very similar to John, but resolve differences quickly, set the agenda. So, and I do it on every meeting with the seller. So resolve, I'll give you guys this one, but the agenda is, gosh, Mr. Seller, do you mind if I ask you, this could be pretty easy. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about the property and some of the details? And you'll give me some answers, and then I'll ask a few more questions, and that will allow me to really be able to share, like, am I a fit, and what kind of offer I can provide you today. Does that work for you? I always ask, because sometimes you'll find they already have a hidden agenda.
Yep.
And then P is probe for pain. So it's the open-ended questions. You never want a yes or no if you don't know what the answer is going to be. And then that's the P, rapid. And then the I is investigate the solution together. It's like, gosh, Mr. Seller, I think John calls it picture perfect, and I call it wave the magic wand. Like, Mr. Seller, if you had everything that you wanted, like, walk me through, what would that look like? Like, what would be
NLP? Yeah.
Yeah. And then the D is taking decisive action together. And so that's but that's how you'd get the faster close rate. Now, here's what I do. This is a little different than John. I always come in with a range. So I'll talk to the seller, and I'll establish, of course, the 4 personality styles, and I will figure out how motivated and ready, where are they on I call it the motivation curve. And if they're crazy motivated and they're ready to go right then, I'll do it. I might be able to step in and make them an offer. But I usually will come in and say, gosh, Mr. Seller, I know that I should be able to get you about 150 for the property, but if you'd be a little flexible, I may be able to pay you as much as 180 to 200,000. And I'll create a huge range, because if I give them 150 and they're just not ready, they haven't made the emotional decision, or people buy on emotion, they justify it with facts. Maybe they haven't gone through the whole process yet. But if I come in at 150, they may sell it for 152 to the next guy when they're ready, right?
Yep.
I want it's the foot in the door. And so, and that's how I buy my creative deals, because they'll say, well, gosh, somebody else will come in and offer them a higher price, and then they'll always remember me. And now if I'm following up correctly, right, now I come back in and they'll tell me like, gosh, I just talked to this other guy and he offered me 155. And I'm like, well, gosh, what would it take? What would make you really happy today if we were able to do business together? And then they'll say, well, if you could give me 156, it's a done deal. And now I got it.
Yeah.
So
and that goes to that relationship building component largely. I mean, to be able to foster that honesty with them, to get that competitor's offer, to understand where they're at, for them to want to do business with you over the other person. That's really that relationship component.
Yeah.
I'll share the range, of course.
Yeah. I'll share another one with you. Remember I talked about Rapid, right? And a lot of people have said this has been a game changer for them. So does any of you know who Frank Kern is?
Mm-hmm.
So Frank Kern actually works with Grant Cardone. He's like, he's the marketing guy. Frank is an absolute genius. He actually was a part owner in one of my businesses years ago. Super good guy, but he had a concept that's disruptive. And so I like to be super disruptive in everything I do and totally stand out. So in sales is basic. It's a relationship. You got to have a relationship. You have to establish trust, and you have to have a solution to the pain.
Yep.
I mean, that's how you beat less than 18% of sellers. And it's not just in real estate, will sell on price. There's 4 other components. There might be 5 other things that they're selling on.
Yep.
Right. And I rarely compete on price. I mean, so here's what I do that's disruptive. This is called the resolve the differences quickly. It's a shifting of power. So I'm talking to the seller, and who has the power initially? The seller has the power. So I want to shift it. So here's what I do. I will come in and I establish rapport. And at the end of the meeting, typically if it's face-to-face, sometimes on the phone, it takes a couple of calls, but they'll invite me over to dinner. And, I become part of the family, right? And so what I say is, gosh, Mr. Seller, my name's Gary Boomershine. I wanted to tell you a little bit of just who I am. I've been doing this a long, long time. I've got a super reputable company. And my wife and I've got 2 kids. And sometimes I'll even show them the picture if I'm face-to-face. And my wife and I love this business. We actually buy a handful of properties. We took our nest egg and invested to do this. And some of our family are with us. My mom, who's 86, and so the reason I said, as long as I can make a modest profit somehow, some way, in exchange for this being a good deal for you and you're happy, then I'd love to do business. But I'm telling you that because I'm not totally sure that your house is a great fit for me, because I am trying to make a profit, but I'm really well known. I've got a lot of contacts. And so I'd be happy to share everything that I'm doing with you and give you all my contacts. And if it helps you, just send me a little thank you letter someday. Is that fair? And all of a sudden it takes all of the alarm bells go off with the seller, because I've already told them, I've already done a takeaway, or, I've already done the takeaway close pretty much on the front end.
And the beauty of that, right, is it's an authentic truth. There's nothing fluffed about that. So one of the difficulties is starting out, how do you get there? I always tell people, you got to be honest about where you're at, because if you try to over fluff it, it's going to come off. The sellers, everyone can smell that inconsistency. And if you're claiming to be the super experienced person and then you stumble over basic vocab, or you don't know how to underwrite the property, or you keep coming back and forth on pricing, contingencies, those kinds of things, you lose all your credibility on the first slip up. So make sure, guys, that you're being authentic with whatever you're putting forward,
Yeah,
including financing. If you don't know where that money's coming from, be somewhat transparent. Be transparent about that. Be honest about that.
yeah, for sure. I mean, honesty, they'll smell it, and authenticity. And also, you can tell stories. Stories sell more than any other component in the sales process. And if you don't have stories, you can borrow them. You can say, I actually, and I think people make a huge mistake coming in. This is a team sport, everyone. Don't come in as the owner of your company, as the real estate investor. I don't actually even call myself an investor. I run a small little family portfolio. It happens to be in real estate, and we love what we do. It's it's a modest thing, and so and you can borrow stories. So you can say, I work with a guy I work with a lot of people, and I just say, hey, tell him that you work with a really good guy out of the San Francisco Bay Area. He's partners with you. So you can always say, I work with somebody else. You should always report to a boss, and that boss could be God, right, or your wife, but you should always have somebody that's the decision maker. And it's fine. The sellers don't mind you coming in and not being super experienced. What they won't tolerate is you coming in smelling like a liar. It's the fastest way to get booted out.
Yep, for sure. We operate on that team basis. I think most everyone knows what our model looks like, but even if I'm negotiating a deal, I always say, hey, I can't get there. Let me go back to my team and see if we can refine. Maybe we missed something on that rehab budget. We very much utilize hey, we're a construction company. We're a local construction company. We're looking for value add opportunities. We also are a brokerage. We're big enough to provide that comfort, but we're small enough to still be personable. And there's a fine line that has to be walk there, and you did a great job of articulating that, Gary. Thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure. I interviewed. We have a public Facebook group with this whole COVID thing. We said, hey, how can we add value of what's going on? So we created I think we got like 1,000 people in the group right now, but it's called Real Estate Investor Beacon. And so I interview people around the country. And I think it was last week, I interviewed Steve Carlson. That would be a good one for you guys to listen to. But he does a lot of creative deals. And so the whole hour and 15-minute call was us riffing on each other on how to basically do creative. It's pretty cool. Nice. It's a good one. Because I'll tell you, I don't want to sidetrack too fast here, but there's 3 buckets in real estate that most people completely miss. They think of wholesaling. Wholesaling is like being trained to build a house with a hammer.
Yep.
It's a great thing. I do it, but it's not the end game. It's a job. It is a job. And yeah, you can be a business owner and ultimately get people to do most of it. But there's 3 buckets in real estate. There's cash now, there's cash flow, and cash later, right? Yep. And and when you're looking at deals, you should be looking at all those buckets. And some deals should be cash now. Those are the fix and flips and the rehabs and the wholesale deals. The cash flow is typically learning how to do the rental properties and also learning how to do loans. Lending is huge.
Yep. Especially
if you're using a 401k or self-directed IRA. It's a fantastic way to make money. And your downside, like I do it as a hedge. I've been doing it for years as a hedge against a change in the market, right? Your downside is taking back the properties in worst case scenario. And then the cash later is typically on appreciation, 0 interest financing, and all the benefits and tax benefits that we get. So what Steve was talking about, the make sense offer, and so always being able to come in and present. The mind needs a couple of options. So multiple strategy or the multiple offer strategy. So coming in with a cash now or an all cash offer, but also something at a higher price. right? And that might be one, if you don't know how to do it, it's the listing. Like if you could bring in and partner with a realtor on your team or somebody in this group, right? And partner, and you could be paid a marketing fee, and it's a team sport, right? And just by doing that, you should be able to double your close rate. And the reason is that the mind gets fixated. And so, like, think of buying a car. Like, the reason all car dealers have typically a couple of models, they got the cheap one, right? And then they got the luxury one, and then they got the other one in the middle. So that's typically, it's usually the cash is my price, your terms, right? They want all cash at our price. And then on the other extreme, the way I do it is your price, my terms.
Yep.
So, right, they get their price,
Sure.
and then I get the owner financing or what have you. And then typically you'll end up somewhere in the middle.
And that really works well when there's equity there. When you don't have equity, and there's a lot of lists that focus on the low equities. I personally don't understand it, but there's methods around it, I suppose. That's where you start to get into that subject too, right, Gary?
Yeah, and by the way, that call that we did on Real Estate Investor Beacon Facebook last week with Steve Carlson, he talked about what he's doing below 100,000. It's brilliant. So most wholesalers, they don't even focus on that, and he's making a ton of money on how he's basically coming in, and he's still buying with cash, by the way.
Nice.
He's still on the low end price, and he's making a fortune. I mean, some of his best deals, and he's actually selling them on terms, and
Yep.
and how he's doing that. So anyway, that would be a good.
If you guys go down that route of pitching seller financing, make sure you understand your terms well, because it all comes back to that credibility and that authenticness. If you can't propose that model to somebody, you're gonna lose more credibility than bringing them a lower cash offer, in my opinion. If you don't understand the terms or what the amortization is, if you're not prepared to answer those frequently asked questions that you're going to get, they'll lose some credibility. So get coached through that, understand that process before you ever try to throw creative into the mix, my opinion. Like Gary said, that listing side, that's a great, easy alternative. You can still add value to everybody that way.
Yeah, for sure. It's not a hard calculation. We have a lot of super top performer. Like, we have the #1 team for Keller Williams in the world using our stuff. His name is Jeff Cohn. They're out of Omaha. He was #1 for Berkshire. I think they did 700 listings, and I think they bought like 1,000 houses last year. He's a young guy too. But anyway, they're coming in and they will make the multiple offer where it's like, hey, I can buy it for cash right now. We could list it. We can even offer you financing if you want to have it fixed up. And then full price retail, we can get this. And I think he said about 40% of them they're buying. Sellers these are deals they would normally not get the listing, because the seller is kind of concerned about, they don't really want people trampling through their garage and closets and all that stuff. So that really being able to come in with the multiple offer, I think, is essential in this market.
For sure.
Well, let's see what else. So
Eric asked,
Mhm.
if you don't mind, Eric asked, he would love to hear how you're using subject to. You had mentioned that earlier on.
Yeah.
I can speak how we're doing it. We don't do subject to. Our creative is almost exclusively, subject to almost exclusively on commercial acquisitions where it's full disclosed and everyone's a sophisticated party. That's how we're doing it. How are you using it, Gary?
Yeah, subject to is interesting. Now, let me give you a couple scenarios. If the property is distressed, property's in foreclosure, or maybe there was a divorce, a death, bankruptcy, definitely in the commercial, it's a lot easier because the seller is backed against a wall. The subject to is all you're doing and most of you probably know this, but all you're doing is you're just taking over they're granting the house to you. So you're getting the ownership, but the mortgage or the original note stays in the seller's name. and you're not telling the bank. So, and you're just making the payments. I'll tell you an example. I'm living in a house. I've lived there for 10 years in California, and it still has the original loan on it. I just took it. I bought it subject to, the lady was a lot older, and it was actually in foreclosure, and I ended up buying it and brought the loan current, and then I just took over this fantastic Wells Fargo loan, and I've been paying it ever since. So the distressed, let's see, I do this a lot. This has actually been, I'm going to teach this. This is, it's what I call creative wholesaling. So I'll give you an example. I bought a place in Fort Collins, Colorado, and the seller he had a mortgage. His wife had died. He's living in Arizona, property's in Fort Collins, and he's got drug addict, deadbeat kids that he feels really bad about, but they're living in this house that needed to be completely torn down. And he wanted 20 grand net out of the deal. And I would have probably made maybe 10 to 15,000 wholesaling it, but it had great bones. So I made a deal with the seller and said, look, what if I could get you the 20,000, and instead of me paying you right now, if you could just delay it. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to fix it up a little bit, and I don't have to go and borrow the money. So I'm just going to, you're going to wait 60 to 90 days. And then I'm going to resell the property. We'll get your kids out. We'll find another place for them. I'll make a couple of mortgage payments for you, and it'll be great. And so he said, done. So I ended up buying the property. I did physically take possession of the property. I made 2 mortgage payments. I put a garage door. There was no garage door. I pressure washed this thing, and I cut down the trees. It was 4 acres, and I listed it on the MLS, and I ended up getting, we made 120,000.
Nice.
So I think I had like 12,000 bucks into the deal. So that would be kind of what I call it.
So you got his 20, you got your profit, and
that's right.
Very little out of pocket because it was just quick claim deeds, no clearing of titles, those kind of things.
Sort of, yeah.
Yep.
I liked it, yeah, pretty much. I do it a little bit. I do like a little different. I actually, well, you can go to a title company and I can do what's called an accommodation recording. Here's a little tip for you guys. This will make some of you guys a lot of money. I go to the title company. I basically say, hey, we're gonna get ready to sell this property in a month or two. And I basically say for the seller, as part of their estate plan, we're actually wanting to get, because they're not gonna be able to be around for the signing and all the work. I'm managing it. So can you do an accommodation recording for us in preparation? So they'll actually it'll go through title. I'm not just going to the county recorder. And the reason I do that is, in some cases, I could actually, if I'm going to put a lot of money, I can record that and still get a title policy.
Gotcha.
All right. And here's another little trick about that. I don't know if you know this, but if a title company records, they open up at 9 in the morning and they typically close at 4:30. Okay. But if you look at when the stamp is for any insured, any deal, deed gets recorded during the in the morning, you'll see a bunch of them that are recorded at 8:30 a.m. Now they don't open until 9. So that's the way the title companies will look to see if it has title insurance. Because see, you could record a deed, and a lot of the title companies, I don't know about Des Moines, I would assume so.
We use abstracts out here. It's a little unique, but
okay. Well, we have the situation where they'll want the seller. They'll ask for the seller. Hey, this was an uninsured recording, and you got to now go track down the seller. And so if you got money in, the seller goes sideways. So that's I learned that hard lesson probably like 12 years ago.
Interesting.
I'll give you guys another tip. Is this helpful, by the way?
I think so. Any feedback from the group? You guys liking it? Got quite a few folks on here. Not a lot of chatter in there, but
okay. I'll give
We got
maybe
a
another
little.
awesome. Here's another little tip. A lot as a whole, and most of you guys do wholesaling, right?
A fair number. Yeah.
Okay. So one thing we typically can't do as a wholesaler is you can't sell to, you're selling to a cash buyer, right? So I like to list a lot of my properties, especially if they're vacant. So in our contract, our one-page cash offer contract, we get the right, little simple wording to get, we have the right, and this is actually something that we give all of our RealEstateInvestor.com clients. We say, hey, here's some wording and see if it works for you. But we'll put wording in there that gives us the right to market and possibly list the house. You guys probably do that too. So I'll list the property, and sometimes we'll get an FHA conventional buyer. Has that ever happen?
Yeah.
It's like, and we can't sell those. But so here's the trick, and I don't know anybody in the country that does this.
And Gary, the reason you can't sell those, A, they're not recorded yet, right? And B, they need to be recorded for 90 days for that increased sale price. Correct?
That's right. That's right. The conventional lenders like Bank of America and Chase, they don't like wholesalers, and so they don't like the wholesale assignment fee.
Yep.
So even if you double close, some of them won't like that either because you have to season. So here's the trick, and this, I learned this on a deal I did in Vermont years ago. You can actually do what's called a cancellation of contract in exchange for demanded escrow.
Interesting.
Okay, simple thing. Now you have to have a relationship with the seller. The seller has to be fine with you making money, all right, and the price that they're getting. So what I'll do is I'll do all that work on the front end, and then they'll sign a cancellation. I'm canceling my contract in exchange for demand. And so let's say I'm going to make 60 grand. Now all of a sudden, like, the profits go up because I'm not selling to a cash buyer. I'm selling to somebody at a much higher price. And so the demand will be whatever the number is. And so now the seller is going to sign the direct contract with that new end buyer. And I don't mind if a realtor is in there at all, right? That's going to come out of my side anyway, typically. And then the demand shows up on the seller closing statement.
Yep.
So just like anything else. And I've done probably 100 of those.
Interesting.
So hopefully that helps. So the demand, the demand at escrow, you want the cancellation just says, hey, when I cancel this contract, it's in exchange where I get paid. So the contract's in place until such time. And I typically record that as well. I'll record that document.
So it's going to show as a title encumbrance and a lien, essentially, with a monetary value for enforcement.
That's right. And it clouds the title so the seller can't go sideways. So
awesome. Circling back, Gary,
what else?
we had promised that perfect pitch on that angry, I think.
Yeah. I'll give you two, and you guys have this recorded. I'd love to get the recording back too. All right. So the angry caller, the angrier, the better. I'll just tell you, the more profit in the deal. The angry, you should embrace those. And what and done this over and over again. I've got a lot of our guys that have done this. Works like clockwork. So what I would say is, I'll call them back and I'll say, gosh, Mr. Seller, they'll say, who is this? And I'll say, I'm probably the last person that you'd want to hear from. And they'd say, who? And I'm the guy that actually sent you that marketing piece of the postcard. And I am so sorry. And just let them vent. They'll scream, they'll yell, and just apologize, and just say, I am really, really, really sorry. And I wanted to just call and just let you know. And was there something specific? I use a company. I have a very reputable company, and my wife and I, we put our nest egg. I go right back to the story. We put our family nest egg. We buy a few properties, and my reputation is really important. And I'm really apologetic. Is there anything on there that I could have the marketing company that we hire, and I'll start with that. Usually that doesn't go anywhere. They'll say, well, I don't know how you got my name. And then I'll basically say, I'll usually say, you know, I have a very specific, I have a very specific skill set, and I just thought, that I didn't know you, and I didn't know how to approach you. And would you have, instead of sending you something in the mail, would you have recommended that I do a different approach?
Yeah.
Like the guy that I made the money on, I've done this over and over again, is I said, would you have recommended that I waited outside the house for you one morning to introduce myself, or maybe bump my shopping cart into yours, or another approach? And he kind of laughed. He goes, no, he goes, you just got me in a really bad state. And then I'll usually just say, gosh, I run a really reputable company. If you know of anybody, we definitely pay really top, you know, good prices for properties, super good reputation. And if you know of anybody, I'd love to pay for your gardening for 6 months, or maybe buy groceries, or donate to your favorite charity if you know of anybody. And that has converted, it's converted more deals, by the way. Usually the angry they're fighting over money. They may have inherited the property and they're disputing. There might be health or something else going on. And I can't tell you how many deals we've converted. You have to distract them though on the front end of apologizing.
Yep.
And embrace those.
Yep.
And so those have worked really well. The people that say they're not interested, those are okay, but you got to wait 4 to 5 months to start working them. A follow-up sequence is huge, of sending text and in a specific script to call them. Let's see, what else would I say? If your follow-up, if you're like, our system does all this, it's all pre-built. If we call it, we have what's called Touch and Grow. We have a CRM that's a software, non-Podio related, if you guys know what that is. We used to use Podio and threw all that stuff out. I think, Mitch, are you on our stuff?
I am not right now, no.
Okay, maybe to get you on it. You guys would love.
I've talked to Robert a handful of times. Yeah, we're supposed to set up a demo.
Yeah, but the follow-up sequence should literally go on for years. So there should always be some interaction. And what a couple little things, the best time to follow up is the time that lead came in. So if that lead came in at 7 o'clock at night, that's typically statistically the best time to follow up.
Yep.
There needs to be some sort of interaction within 15 minutes. And text message needs to be very personable. So if it looks like, if it's an instant text message, like a lot of these systems that you buy, they're not built by real estate people. They're built by somebody that saw an opportunity, right? And so it needs to be delayed a little bit. So if a lead comes in, think about if like within 3 seconds they get a text message, they know it's automated. It actually turns them off. You're better off not even sending anything to them because they won't respond. So it needs to be about a 7-8 minute delay. That's the way we do it. It needs to be super personable. It needs to be different. So the text message, we like to do a text and then push it into the phone team and then have the phone team reach out. When you're responding to a seller, don't ever say postcard, always, or house. Say a note in the mail. Maybe you're responding to a note in the mail. Did you possibly have a property that you wanted to sell? Don't use the word house. They may actually have commercial.
Yeah, home is very charged as well.
It's very charged. It's very personable. There's a lot of emotional attachment. So you use the word property. Because some people will have a portfolio, they'll have land, they'll have apartments. So just a couple little tips. Let's see, what else can I?
We had a couple questions submitted preemptively to this. And one of the questions we got is, how young is too young to invest? You said you got started family-wise, generational, kind of the same boat here. So we came in, I was licensed at 18, just like you. What do you think? Is it too young? Can you get started learning concepts, doing those things beforehand? And if so, how do they get started?
I have my daughter's learning real estate. I mean, I got a 16-year-old. I did an interview of a kid up in Spokane, Washington. Interviewed him. He's one of our clients, and apparently it was really cool. He was actually in a college class, bored a year ago, and listened to a podcast that I was on, and that's what. And basically, he said, "I want to do that," and then he's done 6 wholesale flips and quit, and basically put his college on hold. And so I interviewed him. He is, I want to say, I think he's 20 or 21.
Okay.
So I told him that would be whoever asked that question, I'd go listen. His name is Justin. Justin, from a couple of weeks ago. I think that was maybe a month ago, but I interviewed him. I think you have an advantage being younger. Sorry, guys. I think you have an advantage being younger. It's a problem with being in a car. Because he comes across as like apple pie, and the sellers love him. And he'll basically talk about school and his family. You know, always have a story of kind of like, you could talk about how you got into real estate. I don't think there's any problem being young.
Yeah.
You know, if you're 19, 18, 20, I think that's fantastic. I'll tell you the other benefit is you haven't been indoctrinated to bad habits.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I know, I wish, you know, we spend all this money to go to college. It's like, you know, most of the billionaires never went to college, right? Because we weren't indoctrinated. That's an indoctrination system to be a slave.
Yeah. Would you recommend, alternative to being an agent, is jumping down that wholesale bucket as a young starter? Does that sound right?
Yeah. I don't think you really need to have a real estate license. I think that you're also being indoctrinated. That's also a job. You know, it's a good wholesaling class, and then having good coaching. You know, the fact that you're in this group is you're in the right place. You know, I shared this last week. All of us are about 10 properties away from being wealthy.
Yep.
Where our passive income is greater than our expenses. If you really run the math over, 10 properties within 10 years, everybody is done, right?
Yep.
So wholesale is great. I'll also say, keep the best, sell the rest. So if you're wholesaling, the ultimate goal should not be to do 100 wholesale deals a year. The ultimate goal should be 5 holds, hold 5 properties. The rest of them pays the bills and makes some money. That's great. I know a lot of people that make 7 figures in this business, but it's really I regret selling almost every house I've ever purchased. We do it because it's the cash now bucket. So wholesaling is great. Like right now, especially in this market, wholesaling is the game. I don't know if you guys probably talk about this, but we're going to see not as much in Des Moines, but there's a tsunami going on. It's like, a tsunami. A lot of people go out at the beach and they look at the sand, and the water's going out, and the fish are popping down. There's a tsunami coming.
Yep.
So we're going to probably see a national drop in real estate of, I think, about 20%. And that's coming in 18 to 20 months, 24 months. It's historic, so all the past. But we're then going to see this massive spike in inflation, which means the people that are not absolutely poor in this country are going to own physical assets. They're going to own real estate. So this is a great time to wholesale. Be real smart on what you're holding, subject to owner financing, that type of stuff, or really great deals. And then get ready to buy. So be ready. Everyone on this call and following you, Mitch, should be like preparing. Like you'll hear us talk about the 3 Ps right now. I've been around multiple cycles. I've been preparing. I've been talking about this change. The biggest transitions in wealth happen in these turns.
Yep.
And so there's going to be massive amounts of money to be made. And then there's some people that are going to get stuck on properties, right? And so it's the 3 P's. You want to protect what you got, you want to pivot, and then you want to profit. And
Yep.
this is, this we're coming into a cycle that's going to be absolutely fantastic. I mean, I was looking at the numbers. What do we have? 45 million people unemployed right now.
Yep.
So
Reported
the
unemployed.
height, that's right. So we had 14.5 million in 2010 at the peak. So real estate is a 7-year cycle. And it's been like that for 100 years. This is the longest cycle we've had. It just spun out of control. And these cycles the turn in the cycle has always come from a boogeyman event. So not natural supply and demand. It's all like 9/11, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Cerveza bug. I mean, you look at the history as a guide to the future. So this is going to be an absolutely fantastic time for us to all be in real estate. This is just a time to start pivoting and gearing up for massive wealth opportunities and protecting our families, et cetera.
For sure. There's a couple other questions that came in. One of them was around resetting after failure. So, COVID has hurt a handful of folks, specifically holdings, those kind of things where we were over leveraged, right? What's that motivation? How do you get over some of those fear of failure type components, and what do you do next?
Yeah. I personally, the failures, you really don't learn from the success. It's right. The failures that you learn from. I've shared my story a bunch of times. You guys haven't heard it, but I've hit some real hard ones, and those crises, those things, there's an opportunity. You can't build a foundation. You can't build on a charred wood. Like if a house is partially burnt down, I say burn the whole thing down, get it down to the foundation.
Fix those all the time. Come on now.
Yeah, like let it go. The other thing I would say is expedite the splat. So anybody that actually is running into a financial crisis right now and where you're currently at, you want to expedite the splat. Just go to the worst case scenario. Think mentally and just look at the worst case. And now you've got plenty of time to start adjusting. Yep. And then don't wear a lot of people wear things like, let's say they're broke, right? There's a lot of broke people. The statistics are pretty amazing on how many people are dead broke by the time they die. They're right. The average person in America has less than $3,000, and this is pre-COVID. They don't have it anymore. They had less than $3,000 in their bank account.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of people wear it as a badge. So instead of saying I'm broke, it's just I'm not wealthy yet. Just change your mindset, and don't worry about the I mean, I met a guy, it was right in 2009, and he basically had lost like $4 million of family money, and basically told me that he would have committed suicide. And he said the only thing that kept him going is the commitment to his family. This guy's absolutely thriving. I'll tell you another story. Javier Hinojo, he's a super good friend of mine, a client of RealEstateInvestor.com. We had our live event, and he shared this to everybody, that in 2017 Christmas, he had 17 cents in his bank account, and he had to borrow the rent to pay from his 16-year-old son. And he couldn't rub 2 matchsticks together. And anyway, he came in, and basically he was the problem in his business too. I actually was sitting there, we were working with him, and a couple of us were kind of asking him questions, and we just told him he was the problem because he was not the sales guy. He needed to hire somebody. And so he was super coachable though. A lot of us, when we have success, there's this arrogance and ego gets in the way. And a lot of people that have failures, you become humble, right? And humbled. And I think it's a biblical too. right?
For sure.
So anyway, this guy now is in, I want to say 7 markets. He had a business that did 1.5 million in, I want to say 2019, before all this started. He's got all of his family; they're all working together, and he is at one of the top masterminds in the country, where you got to be 8 figure guy. So it's just it's a pivot. So use it as an opportunity to learn. And then the other thing is you have to change. It's that Albert Einstein thing of, do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result is insanity. You do have to change things. And I see most of it's mindset. Mitch, you guys, most of you have probably heard this, but the most expensive real estate is the 6 inches between here and here. We get stuck. And what's changed my life, I would say, having coaching, CEO coaching, the accountability coaching, somebody that's not just about real estate, it's somebody that can help you overcome those stucks.
For sure.
Being involved in masterminds, number 2, and I say this, it's not just because I'm here with you guys. You'll hear me say this on podcasts and things. And then the third is follow the best practices. Like, I'm a huge Traction. Any of you guys read Traction?
Yep.
Traction by Gino Wickman. This business, especially if you're wholesaling, it's like flying an airplane. You imagine flying an airplane blindfolded with no instrument panels. You're going to die, right? You're going to crash. So you need to know your metrics. I've never met anybody that's successful, especially in this business, that does not know like the number of leads they need to generate on a week and a monthly basis in order to make whatever their dollar amount is. They know their numbers. There's typically 9 of them like for wholesaling, like the marketing spend, the number of leads, the number of good leads, the number of appointments, offers, contracts, deals. And you should know those inside and out. I can get this. Mitch, I'll give this back. Oh, go ahead.
One quick thing on Traction, guys, and we've pushed this before, but definitely check it out. Those KPIs that he's talking about there are imperative. And you don't have to have a team to start tracking your metrics. Start getting those metrics now. Like, understand how many phone calls you have to make. Understand whatever that is.
Yeah. I have. I meant to get this to you for this call. I have a. Gosh, where is it? I have a number. I presented this. I was on stage right before COVID, and I had I did a presentation on how to build a business that works for you, because many of us, we become slaves to our own business. I don't know if any of you have felt that. If you've been around, if you haven't felt that, you haven't been around the business long enough. But I did a presentation, and I had a whole bunch of like things like the scorecard. I have a tool where you can actually say you want to make $1 million or $500,000. It'll give you every metric. It'll tell you like what your marketing spend should be, how many leads it should generate, all the way to the number of dials to the sellers you should make. And I will make sure I get that number back to you, Mitch, so you can push it out to everybody.
We'll get the video of this downloaded and re-uploaded, and before we get that posted, we'll make sure we get that
okay.
added to it.
Yeah,
sure.
I'll get the team to send that out to you. But I have a marketing guide in there of everything we've learned. I mean, there's nobody that knows marketing, especially on the direct mail, than us. I know that because everybody tries to figure out like our postcards. Like we start seeing our postcards going out everywhere, and everyone's talking about it. It's like, okay, there's another one of ours. Brad Chandler, do you know him, Mitch?
Yep.
Express Home Buyer. He has one of the best. We have a postcard that Brad actually developed. It's a white postcard that we call it our 1031 exchange postcard, and
Nice.
the wording is we sell it. We send this to. We call it our invisible list. This is a list that we provide for our clients if they want it, but it's like it's a mostly inherited property, mostly absentee, mostly free and clear. and there's like 18 million of them in the US. And we really like this one postcard because the wording says, hey, we recently sold a property and we're looking for another for the proceeds.
Yep.
And the landlords, the burned out landlords, they like that. It's not a typical sort of message of like, hey, we want to buy your house. If anybody uses the Google Street View postcard, that's not one of our best performing postcards. It gets about half the results.
Because when they're wrong, they're really wrong.
Yeah, and you get a lot of angry calls on it. So a lot of people. There's another one it's called the Doodle. It's like a pink postcard. I think Joe Taylor may have created. He's a big guy out of Seattle, or out of Portland, Oregon. But it's funny because everybody talks about all these great postcards, and it's like, I got the metrics because we send out. I think we've sent out. I think we're doing like 1.5 million to 2 million postcards right now. That's what's another thing that's interesting. I'll tell you, since COVID, the response rates are up 25% from pre-COVID.
Interesting. So we were home, or have you tracked the route yet?
It's also, I'll tell you, the free and clear, the owner occupied are the tougher ones right now. You want to be the ones that are moving are absentee.
Yep.
Or vacants. That's a big one. So because if people are living in the house, they're not getting people out, or right. Let's see. We were averaging. It's really interesting. So 2000, beginning of 2019 to the end of 2019, the response rates dropped. So our average was across the country, across all of our marketing. So our average was a 3% response rate, right, overall.
Yep.
And like in California, you get like a 0.1%, and in Wisconsin, we get like a 7%. It's crazy, right? Des Moines, you should be getting a good response rate in Des Moines. Yep. It went from 3% to 2%, and it was just the stage of real estate. It's the competition. You start getting the late night TV. It's called the euphoric stage, where everybody's talking real estate. You go to the barber shop and people are talking about real estate. And so this is exciting. There's a lot of people that went on the sidelines, and all the big players right now are doubling down on marketing and follow up. That's what we're seeing. Like our direct mail is much higher right now than it was.
Tom asked, is there a difference in response rates between your postcards and letters on average?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yes, there is. And I would tell everybody, very rarely is there any need to send out a letter, dollar to dollar, really what it comes down to is the cost per deal. Everybody should be tracking cost per deal. It's not about the cost of the list. Like if you could buy one lead, you could buy one name and send them a piece of gold, right?
Yep.
And it got the deal. It's really about the cost per deal. So here's what we have found. To get the initial seller lead, all it is ugly postcards. It's all about the copy. It's not pictures, glossy. None of that stuff works. It's all about the copy, okay? Yep. Canary yellow. And by the way, in this text message that I'll get to you, I have this thing that we wrote up all the secrets. Perfect. After 50 million pieces, I've tracked every response rate because we control the initial phone number, so I know exactly what works and where.
Nice.
On average. The only time, well, there's two reasons to send a letter. Follow up. Yep. Is absolutely, you want to use a follow-up letter. We have one, it's called our handwritten yellow follow-up letter. It's not the typical one that people think of, but it crushes it. So that would be, and then if you've got a really small list, maybe it's less than 100, 150, 200 names and addresses, you'd use a follow-up. What we're typically seeing, here's the way it works. You typically will see a little higher response rate on letters, but dollar to dollar, right? You can send out a postcard in the 30-cent 36-cent range, whatever, and typically, 59 to 79 cents for a letter. Just dollar to dollar, you get a better result on postcards.
Makes sense.
So it's mostly a volume game. You want to make it has to be repetitive. So if you're going to do direct mail, as an example, the secret sauce is mail 5 to 8 times, and then repeat it. You then refresh the list,
Yep.
and then repeat it. And it's called the 6 M's. So the market, the message, the media, multiple months, and there's a secret sauce, but 5 to 8 times. How often? A lot of people say, how often should you mail? If you're mailing to somebody that has equity, you should not mail more than every 60 days. Okay. A lot of people, I know Chris Richter says every 30 because he sells a really expensive. His list costs $30,000 a year, right?
Yep.
You're going to get list fatigue. So if it's motivated, to buy my house, I mailed every day. I did not stop. I got 100% response from every person I mailed to, but that was I wanted angry calls and I wanted people to say no just to get them on the phone.
Yep.
Because it was my wife and I were looking for a primary residence. I picked 130 addresses in the neighborhoods we wanted and mailed them every day until they called.
I love it. Those are great questions,
Yeah.
guys. Does anyone else have any other postcard questions or mailing questions?
Yeah. While people are asking, the best day to mail, you want to drop mail on either Thursday or Friday. Typically, the psychology there is the best day for the seller is typically a Tuesday or a Wednesday.
Makes sense.
So you always get a better result. Let's see. Never put a website on your marketing. So we were the ones we started telling that to everybody, and probably, I don't know, 8 years ago. And then all the masterminds started talking about it. Well, it came from us. What we found is the problem is the seller will see the website because we don't have a relationship and nobody really wants to talk to anybody, right? And so if you put a website, you're going to drop the response rate by about 60%.
Yep.
So it's huge, and nobody actually, they'll go to the website and then they're like squirrels onto something else, and they don't opt in. So
Yep.
you won't even know. Let's see what else. 800 number or 877 or 888. Actually, over local. Now Des Moines, you want to test that. Most of the country we have found 800. One is you want 100% of the tracking.
Yep.
And a lot of sellers, especially if like, hey, we recorded a special call, because sometimes they'll want a hotline because they'll want to listen to find out more about it because they don't want to talk to anybody. It's really interesting. So we actually see a bump in the response on putting an 800 over local.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the other reason is, if you have a 800 or 877, 888 number, 100% of the tracking. So they'll call, 70% of these numbers come from cell phones, but if you put a local number, a lot of the time you will not get those numbers.
Interesting. Okay.
For follow-up.
Iowa Nice might apply. I don't know. You're right. That should be A/B tested for sure.
Yeah. A couple places in Ohio and then Alaska and Hawaii, we found that that wasn't the case, but might be worth testing.
Very cool. It's a great idea. And then I know we're over time for what I had promised you, Gary, and I really appreciate you staying past. You have time for one more question?
Sure.
What are the top 3 books, podcasts, or classes you'd recommend right now to get plugged in?
Let's see. I'm a big fan of Traction, for sure. That's probably my favorite. There's a selling perspective, because so much of our business is selling, there's a book called Samurai Selling. It's a very thin book. It's actually was created from the software industry, but it's a fable. It's a very simple book. It's about a concept of a samurai warrior, and the samurai warrior was not about killing. It was about honor of the shogun and the internal kai. It's your state of being of where you're come from. And I think as people in this business, learning how to basically be a servant sales guy, you'll crush it. Of being able to come in and sit down and really being there, honoring the seller, right? The seller, this is a big decision. There's so many people that are out there to take advantage of the seller, and you can make more money and have more referrals in this business and not have lawsuits and things if you do it right. So I really like the Samurai Selling was a really good book.
Love it.
See what else I've got. I've got a whole bookshelf of stuff. What's the other one? I'm reading a book called Halftime right now. Awesome book written by a pastor who passed away recently, about a couple years ago. That's a fantastic book of like how to go from success to significance.
Yeah.
So,
That's a favorite of mine too. What's inside of that box, and making sure that it's the right thing inside of that box, the one true thing that you should be focusing on, and everything else surrounding it.
Yeah. The one thing I live by as a CEO, I live by a rule called my 5-10-3 rule, and that is this came from a coach, but I felt like I never had enough time in the day, and especially as we're all CEOs, right? Maybe it's a hobby, but you either have a hobby or you have a business.
Yep. So
most of the time, hobbies are not for profit. Just as a note. So if we're doing this for a profit, it's a business. So you want to do it as a business, and that means you want to be a CEO. So what I do is I wake up at 5. So I now wake up earlier. I push my day back to 10 in the morning. That gives me 5 hours of personal time. I read scripture. I journal. I make coffee for my wife and clean the dishes. So that gets me out of like, gosh, so many things. And then the 3 during my 5, and I work out, and I have my personal time. Now I have 5 hours. So I don't look at social media. I don't read the newspaper or any of that stuff. Usually I'm reading like 10 pages of something a day as well. And then I'll come up with my one thing. What's the one thing I'm going to do today that's going to move the marker in the business? And then the 3 is I'm going to spend 3 hours as a CEO, and that's all I focus on. And it's usually because I now only have 3 hours to really truly be the CEO. I've learned how to delegate, because this whole business is leverage. It's leveraging money, and it's leveraging people, and then leveraging systems. And so you get really good at that. And because a lot of people, we get up in the morning and we just shuffle, and then we go back to bed, and it's like, and we're still broke and we're stressed out. And it's like, it wasn't until I changed that. And I have 3 businesses, and that 3 hours is spread across all 3 of them.
It's amazing.
So, and that came from that. The one thing was Gary Keller's book from Keller Williams. That was fantastic. It was the same kind of concept. It's not a to-do list. It's like, what's going to move the marker? It's usually raising money, hiring somebody, or delegating something. Right? And it might be writing an email or writing instructions. Nobody learns through osmosis. And then people, like most of us in this business are not necessarily great delegators. We're doers, right? We're hustlers. That's our background. We're probably on the Enneagram, where most of us are 3s, which is high achievers, right? Super high, fast start, take risks. So learning how to delegate is not something that comes natural to most of us. So that 5-10-3 really helped. Cool.
That's an amazing one. Thanks for that, Gary.
Awesome.
What can we do as a group? How do we get connected with you? What should we, how do we get to you? What can we do for you?
Yeah, I have so if anybody is trying to solve the, anywhere from follow-up to marketing for leads to scheduling appointments with the phone team, definitely check us out, RealEstateInvestor.com. We've got different flavors, from anybody that's brand new in the business to somebody that's a 7-figure player and working too many hours. So that you can check us out there. Real Estate Investor Beacon on Facebook. It's a private group. I'm sorry, a public group. You just go to Real Estate Investor Beacon, just search for it. You'll find us. We're always delivering content a couple times a week there. We've got a podcast that's been running. I launched that a couple years ago, and I've gotten really good feedback. So lots of different topics, interviews on things. We're trying to make them shorter. They were like an hour, and now they're like 15, 20 minutes.
Nice. What's the name of that? Is that Huddle?
Yeah, RealEstateInvestor.com Huddle.
Perfect.
And yeah, and reach out. Super small industry, and it's been good to me. And if there's anything we can help, I try to put a lot of resources on that site, and I will definitely give you a place where you can get some of my best stuff I've recorded.
Well, thank you so much, Gary.
Cool.
We really appreciate your time, man. Tons of value added. Very, very much appreciate it.
Awesome. Great time. Thanks, Mitch.
Enjoy
Thanks,
the rest of
everybody.
your
Have a great
vacation.
one.
Thank you, Gary.
And be safe on the cerveza bug.
As far as next month goes, guys, we are going to bring back the legal side, so we'll get that legal interview going. We'll also we've got those lists prepared. We've got the guest speaker who's committed for next month, as long as he doesn't get called back to Washington. So see how that goes. But is there any questions that we can talk through as a group? I'm going to open it up to everybody here. Okay. Well, I really appreciate everyone joining in tonight. Feel free to reach out to Gary. I think he's a great resource for you guys. We will post all of those details that he shared with the meeting recap, as well as get them on the Facebook group page. So thanks, guys. Have an awesome night.